There's a known phenomenon within the vaccine scientific community called immune imprinting, where it's understood that frequent vaccinations can push out existing immunities within people. This has become a growing concern among experts with the COVID-19 vaccines, since people are being mass vaccinated for virus strains that are largely defunct. And as the virus continues to mutate, the vaccine is becoming less effective. According to Dr. Robert Malone, inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology, the current situation where the efficacy of vaccines is fading should have been expected. He also warns that the next wave of vaccinations planned for Omicron and new variants around August or September should sound alarm bells over the phenomena of immune imprinting. We speak with Dr. Malone about this phenomena and about what people should be aware of. Hey, Dr. Malone, thanks for being on Crossroads.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
You know, I was reading your Substack about immune imprinting, and I'll be honest, it's complicated. I think I have a general idea of it, but it's very, very deep. And I want to talk about what immune imprinting is. And this explains, I think, why a lot of people who have the vaccine seem to be dying at higher rates than those who do not have the vaccine. So what is immune imprinting?
Not only dying, but it's important to know that what the data are showing us from all over the world is that with Omicron, what the people that are getting infected and getting infected repeatedly, not just dying but also getting hospitalized or having the more severe symptoms, are the people that have undergone this process of immune imprinting that has been reinforced typically by multiple vaccines, or I prefer really to call them inoculations, because they're really not functioning as a prophylactic vaccine anymore. The question is, why are these people that have had these repeated vaccinations the ones that are getting the more severe infections, disease, and death? It's a paradox. You would think that they would be protected. That's certainly what we've been told by the U.S. government and various people in the U.S. government. We don't have to go over the names. Is that these vaccines will protect us against disease and death. And yet what we've seen over time, particularly in the British data, because they have been relatively transparent, and also from some of the Canadian provinces, not from Canadian National, is we've seen this gradual shift over time as Omicron has entered the population, where a larger and larger and larger fraction of the people getting hospitalized or dying are the ones that have had these repeated inoculations. Why is this? It's a paradox. And since the outset, one of the first podcasts I did was on antibody-dependent enhancement. And the FDA acknowledged that antibody-dependent enhancement was a potential risk. It's in the original documents that the FDA put out. Antibody-dependent enhancement is one particular type of immune-enhanced disease. What we're seeing is something different. And it's the underlying process that makes it so that the influenza vaccines, when they're repeatedly administered year after year after year, if you look at the trends for how effective they've been, effective means how good are they at protecting people in the field from disease and death. Remember, most influenza deaths, just like most coronavirus deaths, are in the old folks, okay? And over time, influenza vaccine effectiveness has declined down to now it's routinely in the 20 to 30% range, okay? Wow. It's the same process. The problem is that when you give a vaccine, particularly these vaccines that are very simple immunologically, they're only expressing one of the proteins of the whole virus. In our case, it's spike protein with the coronavirus, right? In influenza, it's 2 antigens, but that's a nuance. When you give that one antigen, your immune system gets trained to respond to that one antigen. And your immune system, my friends in the military understand the idea we're always best prepared for the last war. Your immune system is like that, or you know it in your own personal life. You've had your own experiences in the past, and they bias how you approach the world, right? You bring that baggage of all the things you've experienced in all your years, and they influence how you respond to new things. Your immune system is the same way. Okay, so the experience that your immune system has had, that it's learned from, genetically actually learned from, will make it so that it will respond to something that looks very similar as if it is the old virus, the old antigen, okay? And that makes it so that it's hard for it to adapt if that antigen has changed slightly. If that virus has changed slightly, it still reacts as if it's the old one.
Now, how does repeated vaccination affect that? Because it seems like normal vaccination would impact that, but how does repeated vaccination change that?
So what it does is we have this really diverse array of cells, B cells and T cells. We're all becoming immunologists and epidemiologists now, right? The immune system is incredibly complex and very, very, very diverse. And you have this huge swarm of potential ability to react to things that is built into your immune system. It's an amazing system. And it's multi-layered. There's more ancient versions. We talk about the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. Right now we're talking about the adaptive immune system, which is the more modern one, okay, B and T cells. And what happens is this process where as your immune system encounters an antigen, it selects for things that react to that and deletes the things that don't. And so when we give something again and again and again, like Wuhan 1 spike, okay, this is to a virus that doesn't even exist anymore. It's not in circulation, right? We keep giving it, and what it does is it trains your immune system more and more and more to focus on that and disregard anything else that's slightly different.
So it starts pushing out your other immunities, in other words.
The other ones that could be reactive, and this is the paradox. So immune imprinting has long been known in vaccinology. It's one of the things that generally we're not allowed to talk about as vaccinologists. No, seriously. I've lost multiple clients, because I used to do a lot of influenza vaccine work. I lost multiple clients for raising the issues of immune imprinting historically over the last 20 years. It is a third rail. If you're a vaccinologist and you're an industrial vaccinologist, this is the stuff you don't want anybody to know about. You want to deny it.
So this is making people's immune system essentially weaker. You're inoculating them over and over against...
It is there's actually a couple of different things happening. There's this training of your immune system to just focus on one thing and exclude everything else. And then there actually is also evidence of damage, more systemic damage to your immune system with this vaccine technology.
So it's not only pushing out your other immunities and replacing it with things that are kind of like defunct, which is kind of like dead variants essentially of viruses, but it's also damaging your immune system in the process.
In a deep way, and that literature is not as strong right now. It's still emerging, but the literature on immune imprinting is bomb-proof. Paper after paper after paper now in the top peer-reviewed journals from the top laboratories all across the world are documenting it.
I read your Substack, and you link these. I think you had more than a dozen there probably. Yeah.
And there was more. I could have gone on and on. The amazing thing is that our good friends at Health and Human Services completely disregard this. They act as if it's like monkey, the classic hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. They are completely disregarding this science, which has been out there. It's been out there since the beginning of this year. They act as if it doesn't exist, but unfortunately it does. And then how do you know that it's hard for me to process what's going on. We've just purchased $3.2 billion of a trivalent vaccine from BioNTech Pfizer.
And that's the one they want to roll out this coming...
just before the election.
Yeah.
With no clinical trials. They've already they've executed the contract for $3.2 billion worth of purchase for a vaccine that hasn't been built yet, that will not be clinically tested, that will be deployed on short notice, and this is more wonky words, okay? It's trivalent.
Trivalent, what is that?
That means that it has 3 different spikes. That's the proposal.
Wait, so this is different from the Wuhan spike protein?
It has Wuhan 1, which is what we've all, the ones that are used now are all Wuhan 1. And it has the BA4 and the BA5. Now, BA4 has already gone in the population.
That's Omicron, right?
That's Omicron. These are the new Omicron variations. BA4 is already essentially outcompeted by BA5. In South Africa, that was an early wave of BA5, it's already tapering. It's going out of the population. Now, it's important that South Africa has mostly natural immunity, not vaccine immunity.
And some of the lowest death rates in the world, ironically.
Precisely. You know what's really at the bottom of the death rates? Fascinating. You'd never think it. Haiti.
Haiti
Haiti has one of the best mortality rates overall in terms of lowest from any of these viruses. It may be because they're all taking chloroquine all the time.
That's right. Well, because they take it for malaria. Yeah, that's right. Well, let's talk about this new vaccine they want to roll out. Because
so trivalent, 3 antigens, Wuhan 1, Omicron BA4, Omicron BA5 that they're calling Ninja. That sounds good and scary.
Yeah, I saw
Talk
that.
About great peer form. So I could not design a vaccine if I wanted to that would be more perfectly attuned to driving immune imprinting. And that's this science paper that you'll cite in the footers for this hit. And that is a fantastic study, came out just a few weeks ago, rock solid, from the UK, healthcare workers over time. And what it showed was that, paradoxically, these healthcare workers that were infected early in particular, like with Wuhan 1, like many of us were, I was, and then have been highly boosted because they're healthcare workers working in the UK, so they've got 3 or 4 jabs, and then they encounter Omicron, their immune responses, their B and T cell responses go down. And these are the people that seem to be getting the chronic repeated infection or ongoing infection. And here's the worry, is that there are other papers, there's a notable one in Nature, that shows that the evolution of this virus is not coming from the general population. The people that are evolving the new strains are immunocompromised people, so this is cancer patients, etc. Yes. And it seems that it's also these people that have been multiply inoculated. Remember they used to say it's the the unvaccinated that are putting us all at risk? The truth is now that it's the highly vaccinated that are putting us all at risk for further evolution of this virus.
Well, and this is ringing some bells, because I remember people warning about this early on, what they called leaky vaccines.
Precisely.
That leaky vaccines cause the variants or the mutations.
And that was true, and vaccinating into an epidemic is, pretty much the epidemiologic definition of insanity. But it's what they did. They didn't think about it. I like to use the metaphor going back to some of my early pieces with Jan Jekielek here in Epoch Times. I'd use the metaphor, if you give a 3-year-old a hammer, everything becomes a nail. And they seem to think that the vaccine, for some reason, is the solution to everything. It's another tool. I don't use a hammer to cut a piece of wood. Okay, you have to use the right tools at the right time for the right problem, and for some reason this has been a one-size-fits-all, everybody needs a jab. And it is doing exactly what was proposed it was going to do in terms of the bad outcome. We're clearly seeing these evolutions, but it's the nuance here, the new information on this is that it's not the general population that's causing this evolution, as much as it is the people that have some degree of immunosuppression, and unfortunately it appears that those include the people that are highly vaccinated.
This is where people get kind of concerned over whether there's a plan behind it, because there's one of two possibilities. Either the people doing this don't know what they're doing and they're just kind of stupid, or they're doing it intentionally.
Yeah, so this is the paradox. Are they incompetent or are they nefarious? And I always say one of the hard lessons for me as a young physician in training was recognizing that sometimes two things can happen at the same time.
Let's talk about, I want to go deeper into this new vaccine they're rolling out, because you said this new vaccine coming out, I believe, September or August?
That's what they're saying.
This new one you're saying is going to be, in terms of this immune imprinting, kind of the worst one yet. Why is this one worse than the previous one?
So the science paper shows that this combination of prior antigen expression of spike or prior vaccination, infection with Wuhan 1, this ancient, with this repeated administration of Wuhan.
Because people are getting the vaccine with the spike protein.
The spike is, the vaccine is Wuhan 1. If you combine that with these new Omicron variants, then you get this even worse exacerbation of the problem. And those are the data.
Oh, because this new vaccine contains the 3 different spike proteins.
It has
together.
Wuhan 1, BA4, and BA5. So it is essentially replicating the data in the science paper, only they want to deploy it all over the world, including to all our children.
Jeez, it's right. They authorized for kids right before all this.
Yeah.
Now, how does this tie to vaccine AIDS? Because people say, V-AIDS or whatever.
Yeah. So
what
the
is this?
VAIDS, that's, like I said, the literature on that.
In other words, immunocompromising people, essentially.
We touched on that earlier a little bit. We said there's kind of these 2 big categories. Immune imprinting is also called original antigenic sin. Okay, and you can now kind of comprehend that from what I said. The first antigen that you encounter biases your immune system, so that was your original sin. Okay, that's where that language comes from. It's really kind of sexy. So original antigenic sin is very much immune imprinting. And then there's this other category that's a lot harder to characterize, and it's the broad-based alteration or suppression of immune responses, and there seems to be multiple pathways that's happening. The spike protein itself seems to have immunosuppressive activity.
Interesting.
Incorporation
which we knew in the original reports, which is why people thought there was some kind of HIV tied to it. But you go ahead.
Well,
yes.
that was in part. So there are some very small sequence elements that look like they might have been pulled from HIV. And we now, remember, we were forbidden from speculating this might have been an engineered virus.
There were scientific reports on it, and I had it in my documentary back in like 2019.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. We were forbidden from saying this, yet now it's the consensus, even at the World Health Organization, that this is a laboratory strain. They say it very quietly, but like many things, what was once a conspiracy theory is now accepted truth. And that's a whole separate discussion, how that whole ecosystem works. But in terms of this, we seem to have multiple factors that are driving this broad immune response.
So you said one of them, even the spike protein itself, has an immunocompromising element to it. What about the others?
And one of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is this incorporation of pseudouridine all through the backbone of the RNA. These are not natural RNAs.
I'm not familiar with the pseudouridine. What is that?
RNA has 4 components.
Well, and you're the guy who's like the RNA guy, right? This is they've acknowledged it now. Finally, you're exonerated.
New paper.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry,
I wasn't lying. What a surprise! It's only multiple patents and patent disclosure and everything else, and so it's nice to have it come out. RNA has 4 components. Like your digital information has 2, right? It's a binary system, zeros and ones. RNA has 4. DNA has 4. They're similar but different. RNA is AUGC. DNA is ATGC. Chemically, T and U are very similar, and they can kind of bind, base pair in the same ways. In the RNA molecule, the U's, uracil or uridine, get chemically modified in your cells in very precise ways. There's an enzyme that comes in and shifts a little chemical bond that moves it from being uridine to pseudouridine. And that's used to regulate RNA half-life, immunogenicity, splicing, all kinds of things.
So you're saying there's a problem with this and the current vaccine. What is that?
So we're getting there. Okay, we've had to lay out the background, so we're all kind of aligned. In the cell, it's very, very precisely controlled. Early on, in the 90s, when the whole science of pseudouridine first kind of became discovered, some of the early papers showed that this modification of pseudouridine from uridine would control the half-life, the stability of the RNA. And so RNAs that were pseudouridinated at certain sites would last longer than other ones. And it was also shown that the incorporation of pseudouridine would cause RNAs to be less inflammatory. They would suppress immune responses against cells that had those RNAs in them. Okay? And so the Carrico and Weissman, the scientists that have been promoted so aggressively for the Nobel Prize by Penn, and Katie Carrico works for BioNTech as a vice president in addition to her position at Penn. Katie actually called me when I was at UC Davis and said, hey, I really like what you did. I'm really interested in working on this RNA stuff and RNA as a drug. She was wanting to do more classical gene therapy. And I said, well, there's a problem with it. It's really inflammatory, these complexes, and we've kind of dropped it because of all these problems, and it has stability problems. And so Carrico and Weissman had the insight, we're going to take this new science of pseudouridine, and we're not going to use this carefully targeted modification. We're just going to put pseudouridine all the way through the backbone of the RNA. What could go wrong? And so this is what they did. This is the essence of their patent. And they found that when they did that, the RNA stuck around for a longer period of time. It produced a better immune response, no surprise. It suppresses the inflammatory response against the cationic lipid, the positively charged fat RNA complexes that are used to deliver it. And so this was their big patent. 2 companies use this technology, BioNTech and Moderna. Pfizer is just a marketing agency. There's a third one that doesn't, that stuck with my old technology of not including the pseudouridines, okay, and that's called CureVac in Germany. So they bought in to this idea, and this is the only technology that's been promoted here in the United States, has been this highly pseudouridine modified RNAs. These are not natural RNAs. There's something different. And one of these key papers that's in your list, the one from Cell, I think it's March, is a group from Stanford that did this fantastic set of experiments. It's kind of buried in the paper, where patients were injected into their arm, and then they drew cells from their lymph node, and they also drew blood, and they said, how long does the spike protein produce, and at what what levels? And they also asked, how long does the RNA stick around? Normally, RNA only lasts for a couple of hours.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Then that's how it was sold. This is what Pfizer told all the physicians. It only stays around. But they never actually did the studies. The FDA didn't force them to do the studies. Okay? And then this Cell paper comes out from Stanford University, and they find that the RNA sticks around for at least 60 days. Now that's important, because remember, the CDC and the VAERS system and the FDA only look at the first couple of weeks for adverse event, and yet the drug is still there 2 months later. It produces more spike protein than the natural infection does. Oh, now that makes sense about why we see more adverse events with the vaccines than we see with the infection itself, because spike is a toxin. I'm sorry, fact checkers, but the data are in now. And this pseudouridine, putting it all through the RNA, that makes it something different. It lasts a really long time. Anti-inflammatory, which is a good thing in some ways, but a bad thing in others. Everything has got a yin and a yang. Yeah. And so that also seems to be immunosuppressive. So you've got spike.
Oh, wow.
You've got the structure of the RNA, and there may be some component, because the positively charged fats that insert themselves into your cells do not typically have positively charged fats. And the surface charge on cells regulates all kinds of cellular behavior. And so these positively charged fats that are used to slip the RNA in also have their own problems. So multifactorial, that makes it really hard to sort it out. The science of the immune imprinting, the immunology, is really, really hard to do. Very small numbers of papers or groups that can do it. And if you notice the author list on those papers, they're huge. It takes an army to do that kind of work, a very highly skilled technical army. And that's for something that's pretty well defined. looking at these big picture issues of overall immunosuppression and things like that, that's really hard immunology to do, and it takes big numbers. So what we have right now is kind of an emerging literature. It's not as strong, and that's why I focus on the immune imprinting. Plus, it has this practical implication in terms of vaccine design and public policy, and what all of us have just spent $3.2 billion on. So that's why I've kind of been hammering on the immune imprinting.
So this new vaccine coming out, you're saying, is like the cocktail that's going to make this a whole lot worse, in addition to the problems we're already seeing in terms of the
from first principles, as I read the literature, okay, and that's me saying, hey, I could be wrong, okay, but I've been right a fair number of times through this so far. At times when I got attacked for saying things, and then it came, just like you.
It happens, yeah.
Yeah. So, to my eyes, having read this literature and dissected it and looked at the quality, the breadth, how many different, it's coming from China, it's coming from UK, it's coming from EU, it's coming from the United States top laboratories, all saying the same thing, okay? And then this science paper came out with this longitudinal, over time, testing of healthcare workers that were highly vaccinated. And it showed this clear and compelling trend. And when you take that, when I heard the announcement of this new acquisition and the characteristics they're talking about, I said, I got to say something about this, because this is absolutely not aligned with what the data are. And if I had read or listened into the FDA VRBAC meetings and the CDC ACIP meetings and the presentation, and I heard those guys talking about, and gals talking about immune imprinting and showing why this wasn't a problem, then I would have had some reassurance. But what I saw and heard was they're acting like none of that science exists. And they're just disregarding it completely and going ahead with this same idea of, give a 3-year-old a hammer and everything becomes a nail. The vaccines aren't working, and so what do we need? More vaccines. This is, I like to say, I think it's helpful to people to have some simple phrases. And this is the first rule of holes, right? You know what the first rule of holes is?
What is it?
When you're in one, stop digging.
So they're releasing this. We're already seeing this problem then, this immunoimprinting and
absolutely,
and the compromising.
It is why the highly vaccinated are getting repeatedly infected. Some of them are becoming chronically infected. It's up to about 30% of the highly vaccinated population, and all over the world, we are seeing these data sets that show that unfortunately, the people that are dying and being hospitalized are overwhelmingly the highly vaccinated. It is not those that have natural immunity. There's another great paper out that's cited in that stack from Qatar. It's still a preprint, but it's very well done, that shows that natural immunity from the infection lasts for at least 14 months, including against the Omicron strains. And you'll recall that we've been told, and I'm sure you've been fact-checked, for saying that natural immunity works. The data are unequivocal, paper after paper after paper, and yet Dr. Fauci continues to talk as if he uses some interesting verbal sleight of hands. He says, well, both vaccine and naturally acquired immunity wane over time. Well, that's true. The nuance is, what's the time course? With the vaccine-induced, it's a couple of months, and with the natural immunity, it's 14. And getting back to the point that we started with this, when you get infected with the virus, the original virus, if you haven't been too badly immune imprinted, you generate an immune response against all kinds of proteins from the virus. You generate B responses, that's antibodies, and T responses, that's cytotoxic T lymphocytes. And you have this great diversity. And so if the virus evolves here, well, you're still hitting it in all these other things, okay, and keeping it suppressed. That's the essence of the immunity acquired from natural infection. The immunity, and I speak as a vaccinologist, the problem with these monovalent vaccines or these single antigen vaccines is they're driving all your immune response against one thing as opposed to the whole virus. And so all the virus has to do is genetically, through evolution, tweak a few knobs to escape that. And that is exactly what's happened with Omicron.